This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How we doing today on this Tuesday? We're getting the month of June started on the Joe Gaither Show. We appreciate everybody who's watching us on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube. You're watching us at Joe Gaither 6 or on the Bama Central YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody who's chosen to be a part of the show. You can also listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We appreciate it if you download, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff on any of your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We're going to kick off a new week, a new month. I know we weren't with you yesterday. We were in Birmingham enjoying the APSE Southeastern Region meeting, hearing from some journalists to see if we can't hone our skills just a little bit, and hearing from John Cohen and Greg Byrne, Alabama and Auburn's, vice versa, Auburn and Alabama's athletic directors. So we got to hear from both of those guys for about an hour yesterday. So it was a great time in Birmingham up at Samford. I want to say thank you to everybody that was there and helped me out. I want to thank Chris Walsh for sending me to that event so that I can get just 1-3% better, hopefully, for you guys to enjoy the content and grow myself a little bit more. What are we going to do today? Well, since we didn't have a show on Monday, we're going to largely do a lot of weekend recap. We're going to talk about Tyler Buchner and his letter that he penned to Notre Dame announcing his return to football, to walk onto the football team on that was Friday. He announced he was going to walk on as a wide receiver to the Notre Dame football team, and he had several interesting comments, I thought, surprising comments in his letter to Notre Dame about Alabama and his time in Alabama. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get to the action on the field. Both Alabama softball and Alabama baseball were eliminated, unfortunately. Alabama softball losing to Florida, losing to Florida on Sunday, 6-4. Their Women's College World Series ended on Sunday night. Alabama baseball losing to Stetson on Saturday. They lost to UCF on Friday, Stetson on Saturday, so they went 2-0 in the Tuscaloosa Regional. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, what we heard from Greg Byrne and what we heard from John Cohen yesterday and the meeting. It was about an hour's worth of an open forum, and those guys talked a decent amount about the state of college athletics and the state of college athletics, particularly on the Alabama and Auburn campuses, and what that can mean for the future of college football and a lot of the sports. And then after that, if we have some time, we're going to talk about rat poison. I think that a lot of Alabama fans, a lot of fans don't know exactly what rat poison is. So we're going to talk about that, contrast, what's reverse rat poison and what's real rat poison. Just seeing a lot of online discourse lately as people are saying, oh, Alabama's going to go 9-3 or Alabama's not going to go to the playoff. Oh, that's rat poison. No, that's not rat poison. So we're going to talk about that towards the end of the show. If we have any time after that, we'll talk about Kalen Clark, Angel Reese, and Conor McGregor, just some other sports stories that have caught my eye over the last couple of days. As always, you can jump in on the comment section at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We invite you to jump in and join us on those different platforms. We'll pop up your comment right there on the main bar, and we'll respond to your comment. We'll take all your comments, questions, queries, or complaints. We love the complaints the most at Joe Gaither 6. So let's get right into it. Tyler Buchner. We're going to start with Tyler Buchner. We'll go to softball and baseball. Then we'll go to Greg Byrne. And then we'll see where we're at after that with rat poison and if we have any time for topics that aren't Alabama related. Tyler Buchner, what was this on? This was right there on their website, fightingirish.com. You can read it, fightingirish.com /Dear Notre Dame from Tyler Buchner. And Tyler Buchner, first and foremost, you want to congratulate him because he was on the national championship winning lacrosse team. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish just won their second national championship in 2 years, back-to-back national champions for the Fighting Irish. Congratulations to Tyler Buchner for that. And look, you were here at Alabama last year, and so you're always going to be somebody that I'm at least paying attention to. If you guys are not paying attention to him, that's up to you. That's totally up to you. But he spent, a year right here in Tuscaloosa, so he's always going to have a little bit of my eye. Congratulations for helping the Fighting Irish win a national championship in lacrosse. But his letter was very interesting to me in a couple of different ways. Okay, first, he outlines, of course, his joy to be back in South Bend. And nothing wrong with that. He very clearly has a lot of affinity for Notre Dame. And you can read in this letter that maybe Notre Dame's philosophies and sensibilities aligned with Tyler Buchner and what he wanted to do. He's trying to graduate in 3.5 years. He highlighted the fact that his Notre Dame lacrosse playing teammates were, future doctors and high-reaching professions outside of sports. So it seems like just culturally, he was much better fit for Notre Dame. But a couple of different things stood out to me. One, he highlights how difficult it was to come down to the South. Nothing felt familiar when I arrived in June, from the Southern draws to the burnt ends and sweet teas to the yes sirs and addressing women as Miss First Name, and locker rooms with teammates whose primary aspirations were to play in the NFL. All right, let's just take this right here. This is paragraph number 3. This is paragraph number 3 in his letter. And great. Okay. I understand. Look, I'm from the South. I'm from Chattanooga. I've lived in Tuscaloosa since 2010. I understand everything in Tuscaloosa is familiar to me. And I understand the South is familiar to me. But I have been outside the South a handful of different times for different reasons. Most of them work trips. Some of them were social trips. I love Chicago. If you know me, I'm a big Chicago Bears fan. I got a big buddy, Taylor Gibson, up there in Chicago from high school that I go visit. And no, Chicago is nothing like Alabama, in my opinion. But it's an exciting place. We went out to Phoenix for the Final Four. It was a totally different place. But I don't know. I don't receive his. I don't really quite resonate with the challenge that is a different place. Nothing felt familiar when I arrived in June, from the Southern draws to the burnt ends. Let's just take it right there. All right, the people, the language, maybe. Look, we're all speaking English. The verbiage and syntax and really y'alls and everything that goes along with being in the South, you're highlighting as a reason, or maybe as pieces of evidence for why it wasn't quite home to you. When you look, I don't, and maybe this is just my myopic opinion and myopic approach, but Tyler Buchner basically highlighting, the Southern draws, the burnt ends, the sweet tea. Look, you ain't got to drink the sweet tea. You don't have to eat the burnt ends. You can, there's plenty of places around town that you could, drink lemonade, drink water, drink your beer, drink whatever you want to. It doesn't have to be sweet tea. Of course, sweet tea served at most banquets and most events, and of course, but water is sitting right there 99% of the time as well. So I just found some of these reasons. Now, the flip side, I found some of these reasons to be strange. Oh, this is unfamiliar territory. But the flip side is, I read this letter in a bit of an artistic way. It sounded like maybe Tyler Buchner was writing this and wanted it to come off very introspective, very maybe colloquial, very, I guess, I don't know. I read this to say it seemed more like he was not writing a fiction per se, but writing a novel. Not as much as a letter, but more of a novel. And maybe some of these things are exaggerated, from the yes sirs and addressing women to Miss First Names. Now, look, I do that in our church, and I do that with the older ladies that I run into, Miss Susie, Miss Nancy, Miss who, Miss that, and that's fine. But you don't have to. You really don't have to. That's not really a part of the South. You don't have to. And the yes, sirs, yeah, that's a natural thing for me, but you don't have to. And you hear it a lot of the times from older people and generations that, oh, they've lost their manners. There's no more yes, sirs and yes, ma'ams. Now, Tyler Buchner seems like a good fella and seems like he's going to be the type to adhere to whatever the manners are. But just to use these as examples for why things were unfamiliar is very strange to me. Very strange to me because, you can go into a building anywhere and hear a yes, sir. And maybe, again, this is just my myopic approach and my bias at play here. I don't know that I would go into a place and not hear yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. You could just say yes or no or whatever to male or female, and it wouldn't faze me. Oh, he didn't say yes, sir. Oh, he's a bad person. No. It just seems some of this stuff is a little bit strange. Just a little bit strange, in my opinion, for why it made it hard to assimilate to the South because everybody says yes, sir. I don't know. Look, I have my own opinions on how welcoming the South is. I think everybody, the generic opinion is, oh, everybody's so welcoming in the South. That's not necessarily the case, in my opinion. I think you get a lot of that fake Sunday nice that, oh, hey, how you doing? No, I care about you, but I don't really want to get too close to you. You get a lot of that, okay, yes, sir, no, sir. We're going to keep this nice and, polite, but I don't know how truly welcoming the South is to outsiders. Now, look, he didn't write it that way. He wrote it that the burn-ins, the sweet tea, the yes sirs, the miss first names made it challenging to assimilate to Southern culture or to assimilate to society here in Tuscaloosa. And I find that to be very strange. Now, he goes into, continuing in this paragraph, in a locker room with teammates whose primary aspirations were to play in the NFL. And I just want to, I read that and I thought, what did you think you're getting into? Tyler Buchner, what did you think that you're getting into? I know it was Nick Saban's last year, but look, and nobody knew that at the time. But if you're coming to Alabama as a high school senior, or if you're coming to Alabama out of the transfer portal, Alabama football, that is, what do you think this is? It's the 33rd. It's the 33rd organization. Okay, you can debate if that's Georgia or not, and that's up for debate now. But it's the 33rd, 34th. It's really that next tier. These guys are trying to get to the NFL. What did you expect coming to Alabama? But if nothing else, everybody's trying to get to the NFL here. And people, you hear a lot of the time. Oh, people go to Alabama for the love of Alabama. Not anymore. Not anymore. Nick Saban basically made Alabama a fast track to the NFL, a direct pipeline to the NFL, and he did that very, very quickly. Obviously, you saw the 2008 recruiting class turned into the 2010 draft class that had Julio, that had Mark Barron, that had first rounder after first rounder after first rounder. This is an NFL factory. Everybody that's here is trying to get to the league. Now, you're trying to win championships and play high-level football as well, in addition to that. But the aspiration is to get to the NFL. So to include this in your letter, Alabama had been an adventure, a place where I tested my limits and discovered both my strengths and vulnerabilities. Nothing felt familiar when I arrived in June, from the southern draws to the burnt ends, and the sweet teas to the yes sirs, and addressing women as Miss First Name, and to a locker room with teammates whose primary aspirations were to play in the NFL. My new environment felt foreign, and the stifling summer heat was a constant reminder that it was not South Bend anymore. And he continues, even so, I embraced my new landscape and started competing upon arrival. All right, that's great. We'll take that as the bottom line. Even so, I embraced my new landscape and started competing upon my arrival. Great. He goes into getting the green light to start for the USF game and saying, okay, I had the best week of practice leading up, but unfortunately I played poorly and was benched for the first time in my life by Coach Saban on ESPN. I was devastated and fell into a deep emotional hole. What I'd been working so hard for all these years suddenly felt like a pipe dream. Buddy, well, first off, if Jermaine Burton catches that touchdown pass in the USF game, maybe he doesn't get benched. And look, the USF game was such a cluster. that it's such a cluster on so many different levels. You had the monsoon that came in. You had the rotating quarterbacks. We're benching Jalen Milroe to see what we have in Tyler Buchner and Ty Simpson. It was a mess. It was an absolute mess. The defense played its tail off, but the offense was literally like pulling teeth. Tyler Buchner saying, I went into a deep hole, makes me think, and especially, going back to the prior paragraph, makes me think that someone, whether it had been Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator, or it had been even Nick Saban, the head coach, someone had put it in his ear that he's going to come to Tuscaloosa, get a fair shot to start, and likely win the job. And I don't know what they told him about Ty Simpson or about Jalen Milroe or about how the team felt about Ty Simpson or Jalen Milroe, but it seems like there was some lost in translation or miscommunication with Tyler Buchner. I got benched. I got the green light to start, and then I played poorly and got benched. Buddy, this isn't, long leash, we're trying to go 8-5 here. Now, he goes on to say, I felt hopeless. I hated football, and then I never played scout team before. Look, that alone strikes another chord out of me. Never played scout team before. Look, I was Johnny Average. I was average athlete in high school, but scout team was a very common thing for the better players and for the average players. And same here in Tuscaloosa. No, you don't see that all the time. The ones aren't playing on scout team, but the freshmen sure are. The freshmen and the sophomores sure are. Even if you're not a one, you're out there. You're trying to give a good look and trying to get reps while you can. Very interesting to me, Tyler Buchner. I'd never played scout team before, but ahead of the LSU game. Now, how many weeks were from South Florida to LSU? South Florida, let me pull this up, 2023 Alabama football schedule. You have the South Florida game, which is week 3 of the season. Yeah, and then you go Ole Miss week 4, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee. 6-7 weeks later, because you throw in a bye week, you got to throw in the bye week after the Tennessee game. 7 weeks later, you decide, okay, I'll just go ahead and try to play some scout team. Look, he talks about being thrown into a deep depression. I felt hopeless and hated football. I was devastated and fell into a deep emotional hole. Now, buddy, I can relate to you on that. I've fallen into deep emotional holes before. And I think that many of our listeners and many of our viewers have found and fallen into deep emotional holes before. That's something to be sympathetic for. But just because you were benched, I'm sorry, you started the year on the bench. You got one opportunity and didn't really make the most of it. Now, I think there's other circumstances at play, but it didn't work out for you. And it took you 7 weeks to put your head back on straight and say, let me see how I can help this team. Now, obviously, he runs the scout team against LSU, and Coach Saban calls him aside, and Coach Saban found me and thanked me for helping the team beat the Tigers. I had discovered a new role on the team and recognized that one bad game would not define my contribution. I learned to truly appreciate having shared goals and the common pursuit of excellence, even if I was not playing. This whole letter to me is interesting, and it's definitely an introspective look from Tyler Buchner's perspective. Tyler Buchner, this is his truth. You cannot sit here and say, he's lying, because I don't think he is. I think this is his truth. You see, I had been lured to Alabama by opportunities that glisten like gold in the southern sun. These little flourishes of language glistens like gold in the southern sun. It makes me feel like this is more of a novel than it is an honest letter. And look, you appreciate Tyler Buchner's writing style, and I definitely appreciate the style and appreciate maybe the flourish that he puts into his letter. And it does end up on a good note. I returned to campus, Notre Dame. I joined the lacrosse team, even though I hadn't played lacrosse since 9th grade. My teammates accepted me. I took 21 credit hours. That's a bleeping beast right there, 21 hours. The most I ever took in a semester, I think, was 14 or 15. 21 credit hours, made the dean's list. Great for him. Everything worked out for Tyler Buchner. But his letter seems a little bit like a dig at Alabama. Just a little. And maybe that's me being sensitive. And if it is, then I own that. And you can say, Joe, you're being sensitive. He's just telling his truth. It just seems a little unusual that, okay, I lured to Alabama by opportunities that glisten like gold in the southern sun. obviously he was lured to Alabama saying, hey, man, you could start here, whether it be Tommy Rees or it be Nick Saban who laid that out for him. Someone put it in his ear that he could come to Tuscaloosa and start. And I think that he was in the mix, just like Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe. But anytime there's an open competition, somebody wins and somebody loses. Now, look, a key phrase here. As a 20-year-old, the ache of leaving behind the Fighting Irish was overshadowed by the pull of the transfer portal and the promise of playing one season for Coach Saban as the logical step towards playing in the NFL. 20 years old. Look, when I was 20, I was a dummy. I'm 34. I'm still a dummy. We're trying to grow a little bit more. We're trying to get a little bit better. But I package this all together to say, okay, this is a young man reflecting on his decisions and maybe not necessarily understanding the culture here in Tuscaloosa, not the culture as far as sweet teas, burn-ins, Mr. and Mrs., yes, sir. Not that culture, but the culture of competition that's here in the locker room in Tuscaloosa. He talks about all the guys are all talking about playing in the NFL. Well, buddy, that's what's been built here for the last 15 years. That's what's been built here under the Nick Saban regime, and I'm not sure how you missed that. I know Notre Dame is worlds away, but you were a smart kid. You are a smart kid. You're a very well put together, well thought out guy. I mean, this letter is, it's beautiful as far as language goes. Absolutely. It's beautiful. You can read it again at fightingirish.com/dear-Notre Dame from Tyler Buchner. And so Tyler Buchner, his writing is beautiful. It reads just straight out of a novel, like a short little story. And as far as a piece of literature, I do appreciate it. And I think it's really good. But some of the aspects do feel, and maybe that's not the way he intends it. Maybe that's not the way he intends it at all. But it does feel a little bit like a dig at Alabama in some ways. And maybe it's just lost in translation, or maybe someone set Tyler Buchner up with false or incorrect expectations about Alabama. So Tyler Buchner goes back to Notre Dame. He competes in lacrosse this past spring. They win a national championship. Congratulations. Now, he talks about it late in the letter that at Notre Dame, always been a part of my faith. Here we go. As I was leaving Alabama, I had scholarship opportunities to play quarterback elsewhere. Even though I knew I was potentially going to give up on my football dreams, I turned them down and told my parents that I would pay my way through school because I only wanted to be at Notre Dame. Look, it's very clear that he loves South Bend, and more power to you, my man. Go back to South Bend, have your rest of your college days, and maximize your own value and really maximize your own experience. I think that's very, very commendable to realize, okay, I spent a year away, but I really wanted to be back at Notre Dame. I can speak to that myself. I came here in Tuscaloosa as a freshman, 2008, 2009. I didn't really do any schoolwork at all. I had a bad year. I didn't really treat the opportunity very well. Now, I'm not complaining about that. It's not Alabama's fault. It's my own fault. We moved back home for a year, and my parents, I told them, I said, I'm going back to Tuscaloosa. And yes, it took me a lot longer to get my life back on track than maybe Tyler Buchner got his life back on track. But I recognize the affinity for a certain place and realizing, okay, this is where I belong and I'm going to be there. So for Tyler Buchner, he wins a national championship in lacrosse in the last 2 weeks. Congratulations. Big time. Great. He's going to get himself a national championship ring. And then another good break comes for him. He's going to walk on at Notre Dame to play wide receiver. And I think that that's just great. Now, I don't know what kind of a year Notre Dame's going to be having, but for Tyler Buchner, all's well that ends well. You can let me know what you think about Tyler Buchner and his letter, his return to Notre Dame. Look, he talks about being put in a depression. His play, his performance in that South Florida game put all of us into a bit of a depression. So we wish him well getting out of that hole and finding himself, getting a degree, and making the most out of the rest of his Notre Dame experience. Let's talk about action on the field for the weekend. Alabama baseball loses to UCF. Walk-in batters, you have good offense on that day, but the pitching is just kind of out of control. You lost, 8-7, I believe is what it was. Let me make sure I'm right here. as all my RollTide.com loads. You lost to UCF. Yeah, 8-7, and then you lost to Stetson 4-0 on Saturday. So opposite problems on Friday. Pitching issues going through into the bullpen, and having inconsistencies, walking batters late. UCF was basically on top of Alabama the whole game. Alabama kept closing the gap, but never could get really over the hump and put them away. You lose that first game in a regional, it makes things all the more tough. It makes things challenging because you're 0-1 in a double elimination setting. You're playing another loser on the Saturday day. And Stetson, I mean, you look at Ben Hess. Ben Hess, starting pitcher for Alabama on Saturday, had a great day. Really had a great day. But you couldn't get any run support for Ben Hess. What was his actual numbers? Ben Hess went 6.2 innings, only gave up 3 earned runs off 5 hits. He struck out 8 batters across the 6 innings, but you just couldn't get any run support. The Alabama batters came up with 5 hits. 5 hits on the whole day. Kate Snell had 2. Bryce Evelyn had 1. Ian Petrutz and Gage Miller also had 1. Yeah, so baseball's over. Baseball's over for Alabama. And you look at the season, it ended rather lacklusterly, if that's a word. You lost to South Carolina in the first game of the SEC tournament, 1-done in the SEC tournament. You're 2-done in the regionals, and you lost your last SEC series to the Auburn Tigers, 2 out of 3 down there on the Plains. Not a great ending for the Alabama Crimson Tide. We can just be honest about it. But on the whole, encapsulating the whole, you had I think a pretty good season. I'll give you a nice B. I'll give you a nice solid B, especially for the first year under Rob Vaughn. Obviously, you wanted to win a game in the SEC tournament. Obviously, you didn't want to go 2-done in the regional. Not good. But as far as all the turnover that they had, dealing with all the pitching injuries that they dealt with the early part of the season, it was a good year. I mean, was it up to expectation? Was it up to what you wanted? I would say no, but I think that you did fair. I mean, I think the guys left it all out there, and that's going to be a theme for the rest of this kind of baseball and softball talk, leaving it all out there on the field. I don't think that any of the guys mailed it in over the weekend down there in Tallahassee. And ultimately, if you're not mailing it in, you give it 100%. I am of the opinion that, sure, some mental errors could be fixed. Sure, some approaches at the plate can be fixed, of course. But really and truly, you're just asking for 100% buy-in and 100% effort, and I think you got that out of this Alabama baseball team. I think that some of the circumstances caught up with them towards the tail end of the year. Now, the big thing for Alabama is, can you keep Justin LeBron? Can you keep Justin LeBron from going into the transfer portal? And look, I don't know Justin LeBron, and I don't have any insights on him. But a high-level infielder, a high-level freshman infielder, really reminds me, different position, but last year, high-level freshman infielder Colby Shelton goes into the transfer portal and is basically paid by Florida, paid to go to Florida. NIL deal to go to Florida. And good on him. That's fine. That's no big deal. That's part of the game by now. And you saw the same sort of thing with the pitcher who went to LSU, who's escaping my brain right now, but who was a Friday night starter for Alabama, goes into the transfer portal and ends up at LSU on a nice NIL deal. Justin LeBron's that next guy, man. He had a really good freshman season. Let me click on his line right here, and let's find out exactly how good it was. SEC, he was all SEC, was he not? All SEC freshman for sure. Oh, of course, RollTide.com is going to go really slow. Man, I don't know what they did. Maybe start of the year, January, to RollTide.com, but everything, and it's not just RollTide.com, it's all the college websites. Some company had to go in there and buy it, I guess. Yeah, first team All-SEC shortstop. Yeah, first team All-SEC freshman team, SEC All-Defensive team. So great year for Justin LeBron. You look at the entirety of the season. Let me pull up his bat. 344 batting average. Goodness gracious. 9 doubles, 12 home runs, 38 RBIs, 550 slugging percentage. He drew 20 walks. He struck out 53 times. But come on, you're a freshman. That happens. in the field, a 951 fielding percentage at a shortstop from an SEC in the SEC. That's a guy that I'm worried about keeping if you're Alabama baseball. And I think that if you're looking in the NIL coffers, which I am not, but if you're looking in the NIL coffers, you need to ask yourself how much you want to be donating to Justin LeBron to get him back in Tuscaloosa as a sophomore. So Alabama baseball is over, and I think it was a B season. I'll give the whole grade a B. 85, right? What are you going to grade Rob Vaughn in his first year? Was it good enough to just go to a regional? I mean, you were 2 and done. Was it good enough to qualify for the SEC tournament and lose in the first game? I don't think so. I think you got back to a regional, and that's great, but not necessarily the best postseason performance. Oh, here we go. I can handle this right after my show. Alabama getting a little recruiting news. I'm recording. I can get it right when I finish. And who is it, you ask? It was a huge recruiting weekend. 4-star quarterback Kalen Russell commits to Alabama. He flips from SMU to Alabama right now at 3:15 on Tuesday. Kalen Russell was a part of a huge recruiting weekend. You had 12 guys on official visits. A couple of them were already Alabama commits. But Kalen Russell flips his commitment. What was he? A 4-star out of Texas, right? Kalen Russell. We are taking a pivot on the show. Duncanville quarterback out of Texas. He started for the last couple of years. 4-star quarterback, 6'3". Ooh, skinny boy, 175. But look at his numbers here. 3,400 passing yards last year as a junior, 2,300 passing yards as a sophomore, 38 touchdowns. I mean, this is high level Texas high school football. 38 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns. My man's becomes the first quarterback commit. For Kalen DeBoer. Andrew Irving's director of scouting for 24/7, elite playmaker for quarterback position that can beat defenses with his arms and his legs. He's been surrounded by an all-star cast the past 2 years, but has done more than just steer the boat, as he often delivers in key moments. Accurate to the first 2 levels and gets the ball out fast, slides around the pocket with his limber movement patterns, and has both speed and agility to turn scrambles into back-breaking gains. More of a one-read anticipatory thrower at this stage, but he isn't afraid to plant his flag and take a hit as he scans the field. He's also proven to be a rather efficient distributor on the move, with the touch to drop deep passes into tight windows. He should be viewed as one of the more exciting signal callers in the 2025 class. He must improve as a decision maker and working on the fundamentals, but he has what it takes to provide some fireworks on Saturdays. He enters his senior year with a 29-1 record and a 69% career completion percentage. So my man's is a really nice little athlete. 14-1 last year for Duncanville, led them to their second Texas 6A state championship in a row. You think about Duncanville and you think about Kendrick Blackshire is the last Alabama player, I believe, from Duncanville. Now look, you're going to have to contend with more official visits for Kalen Russell. He was at SMU last week. 2 weeks ago now, May 17th, and he wasn't a commit for SMU. This past weekend, he was a part of really one of the bigger recruiting weekends. It basically kicked off the summer here at Alabama. He had an official visit at Alabama. Next week, he's going to Florida. The week after, he's scheduled to go to Oregon. Now, will he cancel those visits? You don't know. Maybe he will. Maybe he's locked in with Kalen DeBoer. But that's what's up on the horizon for Kalen Russell. He's considered the number 6 quarterback in the 24/7 composite. He's considered the number 34 overall recruit in the 2025 class, and he's considered the number 10 overall player in the state of Texas. Now you see 6'3", 175, and you see a fellow who's going to have to put on 25 pounds worth of weight once he gets into the college level. But a year away, and now Kalen DeBoer gets his very first quarterback commit here in Tuscaloosa. So Kalen Russell flips from SMU to Alabama. And sorry for that pivot, but not often that we get a little breaking news on the Joe Gaither Show. So big congratulations to Kalen Russell joining the Alabama recruiting class, and big congratulations to Kalen DeBoer basically getting the first commit since middle of January, February, March, middle of April. So you went all of May without a commit, but you kick off the month of June with Kalen Russell joining the recruiting class. You can let me know what you think about Kalen Russell on the comments at Joe Gaither 6 on any of the social media machines. Are you excited about this quarterback joining the Alabama Crimson Tide class? He becomes the 11th commit in the class. The first quarterback, obviously, he's going to be joining wide receivers Latsier Brooks. He's going to be joining wide receiver / safety Derek Smith. It's going to be, looks like a really nice class. Everybody talking about, Husky Harsin, and he can't recruit. Well, you're 11 commits in now for Alabama with what? How many months until December? 7 months until December. So you got plenty of time to get the other 13 or 14 recruits into the fold. But now that you have the quarterback, look, you get a quarterback in the class, it kind of gets the ball rolling on the rest of them. Everybody realizes that they have a leader in the class that they can lean on. So very big commitment for Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide. You can read about it. My man Blake Byler or myself will write about it on BamaCentral.com here in just a moment. Let's keep going on the show. We're going to address softball. We already did baseball. We graded baseball a B for the season. You can give me your grade. Let's grade softball. Softball going out to Oklahoma City, going 1-2, losing to UCLA, beating Duke, and then losing to Florida. It was a nice weekend. It wasn't a great weekend. It was look, considering they were the lowest seed in the entire field out there at Oklahoma City, what more could you have asked for? What more could you have expected? Now, the Sunday game against the Florida Gators was a bit of a head-scratcher in a lot of ways. Well, in two ways. A head-scratcher in the fact that Patrick Murphy brought in Ailey Johnson and brought in a pinch hitter for Kili Cahalan down in the seventh inning. Ultimately, Alabama lost 6-4. You lost 6-4, and Kayla Beaver had a pretty nice little game, but she was getting touched up the entire game. Jocelyn Brisky comes in, and she does okay, but she puts two runners on and gets Alabama into a jam. Patrick Murphy brings in Ailey Johnson, and 1-2 pitches later, it's a 3-run home run, and Florida's got 6 runs. It's 6-2, and the game's broken pretty much wide open. That was the 6th inning, I believe, 5th or the 6th inning. So Alabama didn't really have many more chances. I don't really want to slam on Patrick Murphy's coaching decisions. He goes into the postgame press conference, basically outlines the pitching plan that says, we wanted Caleb Beaver to go through the lineup a couple of times, but once you get through the lineup a couple of times, these Florida Gators have they had a tendency of getting to the hitter after the third or the fourth time through the lineup. And as for Jocelyn Brisky, look, you start to get yourself into some trouble. You got runners on first and second. Okay, you got to make a move. Well, I thought that Caleb Beaver was already kind of getting touched up, so you went to the third option. The biggest thing for me was Ailey Johnson hadn't pitched for Alabama since May 4th, a month. She hadn't pitched in a real game in a month. So, yeah, it looked a little questionable, I think, to the average fan, but his explanation was fairly straightforward, and I thought, I accepted. I think that he knows better than all of us, better than I do, about the state of the pitching staff, and he's got all the information right there at his fingertips. Ultimately, Alabama loses. And goodness gracious, you have a wave. Oh, gosh, I don't know how else to describe it. You had a social media kind of blow up over the weekend after Alabama loses about what's it going to take? Does Alabama need to move on from Patrick Murphy? What's it going to take to win another Women's College World Series? And you've got two sides of the same coin going at each other. Obviously, most everybody that is involving themselves in this discussion supports the University of Alabama. But you've got two sides of the coin fighting with each other. You've got the pro-Murphy crowd, which consists of a lot of former players going on to social media, getting after people, questioning Patrick Murphy's job. You've got people saying, oh, this isn't good enough and the program's been in decline. And, oh, what are we going to do? You got to win another national championship. Well, how many programs have won a national championship since Alabama's 2010 national title? I think it's 4. I think it's Oklahoma. I think it's Florida. There are very few programs who have won a national championship. Now, Oklahoma won 4 in a row. So that, takes care of some of that. You just have this huge kind of back and forth issue with Patrick Murphy and the future of the program. Now, we graded Alabama baseball a B. And if you just take the snapshot of the regular season for Alabama softball, I think you probably got to grade them lower as probably a C+, a C, almost a low grade. But it's not a regular season sport. It doesn't matter what happens in the regular season. Only thing that matters is the bottom line. And the bottom line is Alabama softball got back to the Women's College World Series. Alabama softball made its 15th appearance at the Women's College World Series. There are only 3 programs that have made the Women's College World Series more times in their history than not. I hear that again. 3 programs that have been to the World Series, the Women's College World Series, more times in their history than they've been left at home. Alabama, with 15 appearances in the Women's College World Series, joins alongside UCLA and Arizona. That's high status. That's royalty status. Now, of course, you want more than one national championship. It's understandable. That's very understandable. But Patrick Murphy, after the game on Sunday, made a reference to grapes and made a reference to, basically the, let's see if I can find it, because I think I've got a little Bama softball pitching plan. Yeah, Murphy grapes. I'm going to load that real quick.
There's a scene where they're crushing grapes and they're trying to make wine. And they get to the bottom of the barrel and they have all these grapes they're done. And they have got every single ounce of juice out of those grapes. And that's it. And that is this team. They squeezed every single ounce of being a great teammate, being great leaders, being great reps of the University of Alabama, worked their butts off, and they got here beyond anything that I could ever imagine. And it's been one of the most enjoyable teams to coach in my career.
What do you think about that? Is that enough? Is that the goal for all the teams that you play or all the teams that you're supporting and watching? Look, Alabama football did the exact same thing. And I think Alabama basketball did the exact same thing. You squeezed every bit of juice out of the talent pool that was on the team. I think that you overcame the deficiencies. Look, Alabama football, we've gone over it, has had a lot of deficiencies this past season. Most obviously, people talk about, the center couldn't snap the football. I don't know if that was it. I don't know if that's the true bottom line, but it's an easy excuse. It was something to overcome. Alabama basketball, they don't play defense. They can't beat good teams. They can't beat elite teams. Look, Look, I understand national championship or bust. I understand you want to win a title. Oh, the standard at Alabama is excellence. The standard is the standard. The standard is high. I get that. But let's be realistic here. Only one team wins the championship every single year. Michigan had a great year. UConn had a great year. We don't know what it's going to be in softball, but it might be Oklahoma, might be Texas, might be Florida. They're having great years. They're strong seasons. Only one team ends the year happy. What do you really want from your team? I think that Patrick Murphy outlines exactly what you want for your team. Use every bit of gas that you have. Use every last drop of gas that you've got. Squeeze all the talent out of the team that you can. Now, look, can you talk about recruiting? Can you talk about philosophy? I think you absolutely can. But that is off-season. That is preseason. That is big picture. Those are big picture conversations. You're inside the season. right? Oh my gosh, you have just gone one and done in the SEC tournament. You've lost to LSU. And are you going to host a regional or not? Like, are you going to salvage your season? We said Alabama, probably C plus regular season. But you make some adjustments, and Patrick Murphy talked about kind of reverting back to some small ball philosophies, and how that had really propelled the season. You won your regional. You got back on track. You went to Knoxville. You knocked off the number 3 seed in the entire tournament. Basically, you fell into a 1-0 hole, and then you went two wins in a row, improbably in Knoxville against probably one of the best pitching staffs in the country. Look. Do you want to win a national championship? You absolutely do. I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair to have that desire. But I think it's a little unrealistic. If you're firing people because they're not winning national championships, well, Nick Saban should have been fired. Oh gosh, you lost the 21. You lost the 21 national title to Georgia. You didn't make the playoffs in 22. You lost the national championship the college football playoff game against Michigan. Oh man, if he didn't retire, then we should have fired Nick Saban. That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd. Nick Saban talked about this past year's football team being his favorite season, and it sounded very similar to Patrick Murphy right there. The buy-in, the perseverance, I think it's very, very commendable. And so, no, I don't give the softball team a C or C plus season. I think that the postseason run salvages things because ultimately, look, we don't have to pretend that softball is the biggest sport in the world. We don't have to pretend like they're on TV all the time. But at the end of the year, when the tournament is coming to a head, when super regionals are on ESPN and on ESPN2, when Women's College World Series is on ESPN and on ESPN2, who is one of the programs that is out there representing almost every single year? You've been there 3 out of the last 4 years. Who's one of the programs that stands there at the end? It's Alabama. Alabama is out there at the end. Oh, we're beating Tennessee. Oh, we're giving UCLA a run for their money. It was a tough game. You beat Duke, and you hung in there. They fought with Florida. Yeah, they took the 6-2 deficit, but they found 2 more runs in the next inning. They just weren't able to really get things going in the 7th inning to keep the rally going and extend the game. But they used every last bit of their juice. They used every last bit of their gas. Nothing was left on the table. Nothing. And so for fans, I don't know that you can be upset. I don't know that you can be fairly upset. Now, you can be upset, but I'm basically going to say that I don't think you're being fair and you're being irrational. You can talk about recruiting, but I wonder if the recruiting pool in softball is not as deep as people think. And I'm sure that Patrick Murphy's not seeing a future Bailey Hemphill out there on the recruiting trail and saying, "Oh, I don't want her. I just want the small ball girls. I don't want power." Now, you can talk about development, and I think that's fair. Adam Arbor in his first year as hitting coach, it didn't really go well. How many girls batted over 300? I think just one. I think it was a tough year from the hitting standpoint. And maybe that's a conversation that Patrick Murphy's going to have with his staff this year, with himself and with with Greg Byrne and with the rest of the staff. Maybe there's some philosophy changes that need to happen in Adam Arbor's approach, or maybe that position just needs to be refreshed. He's been the volunteer assistant coach. He got promoted this year. That, I think, is a fair criticism. But do we need to move on from Patrick Murphy? I mean, my man has been to 15 Women's College World Series. And you could say, oh, it's not good enough. That's Mark Richt. That's Mark Richt, Joe. Oh, it's Mark Richt having 8 wins a year at Georgia. We want to get to Kirby Smart. I think that you could make that argument, but I caution you, will you fire Patrick Murphy and hire someone who's going to take the program 2 steps higher? Or is it more likely that you fire Patrick Murphy and the program takes 3 steps back, 4 steps back? I think Patrick Murphy has a really nice little hold on what it takes to be successful in college softball. And I think sometimes it's a be careful what you wish for situation. If you fire a coach, that's the easy part. That's the easy answer. Oh, fire them. They're not getting it done. Well, we can disagree on getting it done or not, but we'll take your premise. Fire a coach. He's not getting it done. Okay. Who are you going to hire? You going to hire Patty Gasso away from Oklahoma? No. You're going to hire Mike White away from Florida? No. You're not going to hire these top-level coaches away from some of these big blue blood type programs. That's an absurd. We're in Alabama. Of course they want to come here. These people have established their own programs. I think it's kind of just you get a little bit of a football mindset sometimes where it's national championship or bust, and I think that's a bit unfair. I think you can measure the success of the season a bit differently, a bit more fairly. I think you can measure the success of the season by look, you can call me soft and you can say, Joe, wins and losses matter. They absolutely do. If they didn't make the postseason run, then I would say that some of these arguments are much more fair. But they did. I had somebody say, oh, Joe, you wouldn't be saying this if they didn't win the Super Regionals. You're right. But guess what? They did win the Super Regionals. They got to Oklahoma City, and they won a game in Oklahoma City. Of course, you want to win more than one game. You don't want to be going home on a Sunday. You want to be playing deep into the next week. But come on. The postseason run was special. Yeah, and you can say, oh, it wasn't good enough. But it was pretty dang special from where the season was. The season was, not looking so hot. The first year under 500 season in SEC play under Patrick Murphy, not looking so hot. To go from there, to go from the 14-inning game against LSU in the SEC tournament where you're losing and you're one and done, to go from that to, oh shoot, we're going to go win a regional. We're going to go knock off Tennessee, who you only scored one run against in regular season play over 3 games. We're going to go beat them and get to the Women's College World Series again. Come on. I understand that you still are frustrated from the times that you were at the Rhodes House this year, and you saw some less than stellar softball. But the bottom line result is, at the end of the when it's all said and done, Alabama has a top 6 finish. Okay. Do you want to be number one? You do. But it's a hard game. It's a hard sport. I think that being number one, it's special. What Oklahoma has done over the last handful of years is improbable, impossible. Not impossible because we've seen it, but it's going to be very, very challenging to stand up to. So I think people need to take a step back and realize how good you have it under Patrick Murphy. Do you want to win another national title? Yes, I think that's absolutely fair. But you've got it pretty damn good under Patrick Murphy. You've got it really damn good under Patrick Murphy. Do a couple things need to be adjusted or tweaked? Sure. But to ask or to say, should we move on from Patrick Murphy is, in my opinion, absolutely absurd. Especially considering the bottom line result that was, a top 6 finish. All right, let's keep going. Yesterday, I was in Birmingham, up in I usually go to their social. Excuse me. I'm texting my man Blake Byler, who's writing about Kalen Russell. Yep, Kalen Russell committing to Alabama, and Blake Byler is writing about that right now for us at BamaCentral.com. Yesterday, I was up in Birmingham at Samford for the APSC Southeastern meetings. We heard from Tony Tsoukalis. We heard from several different great journalists to try to learn from them about NIL, the transfer portal, learn about recruiting and kind of how to be a little bit better at our jobs. So I appreciate their time. But the main part was hearing from Greg Byrne and John Cohen, Alabama Athletic Director and Auburn Athletic Director. You can watch their portion right there on Bama Central's YouTube channel. It's right there. You can kind of check out what they had to say to us. Some of my big takeaways were really, most of the meeting, most of their portion was about the House versus NCAA and how that's going to affect college sports going forward. And I think that they were very coy around how it's going to affect these athletic programs going forward. Because I think, look, Alabama has 21 athletic programs, and 2 of them consistently turn a profit. You know which ones they are, football and basketball. Yeah, sure, sometimes softball will, sometimes another sport will. But on the whole, on the consistent basis, it's just football and it's just men's basketball that turn a profit. So you've got 19 sports that are really subsidized by football and men's basketball, and really and truly subsidized by football. I think that with the House first NCAA settlement, you're going to have this, $15 to $20 million budget item that's going to be an expense for these athletic departments. And these guys are about to have some tough conversations within their athletic departments. Greg Byrne basically says, no matter what, we're not going to stop funding football because it funds everything else. We're not going to stop investing in football because it funds everything else. Greg Byrne at the SEC spring meetings, and he reiterated it yesterday, talking about the athlete's experience at Alabama, whether they're a football player or a swimmer or a rower or a volleyball player or women's soccer, whatever the case may be. Pick your sport, pick your poison. Whatever athlete it is, he said, we're investing in that particular athlete at about a cost of $195,000 a year. What makes up that cost? Food makes up that cost. Travel makes up that cost. Lodging makes up that cost. Equipment makes up that cost. Now, obviously, some are getting more equipment than others, depending on the sport. You only need a tennis racket. You don't need a helmet and shoulder pads and all kinds of things to play tennis. But you're still going through tennis shoes. You're going through shorts, hats. Like, there's equipment in every single sport, and so. Basically, if you average it all out and you say, bam, this is the pool that we invest in our athletes, and our athletes are 21 sports times however many scholarships, it breaks down to $195,000 per year. That's a huge investment. Huge investment. And I think that people may or may not really realize how much is getting invested in these athletes. But at $195,000, and you're about to get a new line item, a new expense, at $15 to $20 million for the athletic program, or for the University of Alabama athletics, to pay the players basically directly, to pay the athletes directly. You're paying some former athletes and current athletes. The big takeaway for me was not that they're thinking about cutting sports, which I think might be the break glass in case of emergency option, but it basically said we predict that the athlete's experience in 5 years is going to be lesser than the athlete's experience over the last 5 years. Look, Alabama, I mean, going back to COVID-19, goodness gracious, how many dadgum COVID tests did they put the football players through that year, testing them every single time they went into the building? And you can agree or disagree on those methods, and that's fine, whatever. That's not what I want to discuss or debate. But the point is, they invested heavily into the football team that year because of all the COVID restrictions to keep them on the field. And the football team rewarded the athletic department with a national championship. But basically, since then, the investments have gone through the roof. Greg Byrne talked about it yesterday that the food budget for the entire athletic department has reached about $3 million. What? They're spending $3 million a year on food? Absolutely wild. Now, I don't have a problem with it, but you're going to have to make some cuts, some places and somewhere. And so I think that they're outlining basically a future path that sees the athlete's experience. Maybe you're not flying charter. Maybe you're not flying a charter flight from Tuscaloosa out to Oklahoma City. Now, I mean, the plane looked nice when I was out there at the airport from the outside. It looked nice when I was out at the airport 2 weeks ago, or last week before the ladies left for Oklahoma City. I think it was last Tuesday. It was a nice plane, good. And I'm sure that the amenities were nice on the plane. Maybe some of these things get cut to basically the athletic departments are at a crossroads. Do we cut sports or do we cut the athlete's experience? And it sounds like, in favor of keeping sports on campus, some of the non-revenue sports, women's volleyball, rowing, tennis, women's soccer, baseball. Baseball is a non-revenue sport essentially. To keep these sports on campus, the experience for the individual athlete will be diminished. Now, they're going to get direct payouts. they'll get direct payouts, and so it'll become a paycheck, and I guess they can go to Chuck's Fish if they want to have that nice dinner. They can go eat at some of the nicer places because of the direct payouts, but maybe some of the overall athletes experience, you get X amount of helmets for a year. You get X amount of pairs of gloves. Look, I know wide receivers on campus at Alabama that are getting new gloves for every single practice. Maybe that's going to get diminished a little bit, and some of these expenses are going to get reined in. I think that is going to be where the first place that these athletic institutions find some of this money to pay these athletes going forward. Now, John Cohen, the Auburn athletic director, said something yesterday that you saw it on AL.com. You saw it in a couple of different places. You saw it at Tuscaloosa News. John Cohen talked about Alabama and Auburn potentially playing 3 times in a row in a season. And I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's possible. But I don't want it to be possible. You got the Iron Bowl at the very end of the season. Okay, you conceivably can have Alabama. You can have Alabama and Auburn playing in an SEC championship. You get 2 undefeated teams in an Iron Bowl. One wins, one loses. They play the next week in the SEC championship. You could conceivably have the teams at 1-1, 2 wins apiece, and okay, they both have 1 loss. And the College Football Playoff Committee seeds them as the 5th seed in the tournament against the 12th seed in the opening round. And bam, you've got 3 Iron Bowls in a row in quick succession. Now, John Cohen sounded very excited about that. Greg Byrne didn't seem as excited. Now, he didn't really speak up. He didn't really speak up against it. But I think that the guys, I think that the leaders of the athletic department are very excited about where college football is going, as far as playoff expansion, where college football with the SEC is going as far as bringing Oklahoma and Texas into the league, combining the East and West. I think that they see big dollar signs going forward for their institutions. And look, Tony Tsoukalos asked them a good question. Will you forego investment in other sports to basically ensure that football is still king, that football is still getting invested in at a very high level? And Greg Byrne didn't say they would forego the investment in other sports, but basically said we are absolutely going to continue to invest in football. He acknowledged that Alabama's greatest investment has been Nick Saban over the last 15 years. I mean, you look at the enrollment numbers at the university, you look at basically the fan base. I mean, you already had a huge and loyal fan base, but it has exploded even more so over a 15-year period. You look at what that's done for the university. Football is king. Football drives the bus. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to see some of these changes in action. It's going to be a little scary to see some of these changes in action as well. Hopefully, ideally, you don't have any of these sports get cut. That's my biggest fear going forward. Now, we're at an hour. I'm going to save some of these topics for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to talk to Austin Bidwell about Major League Baseball and the Kansas City Royals taking on the Cleveland Guardians. We'll see who else we can catch up with on the Walsh Writing Network. And we'll talk about rat poison because I feel like some Alabama fans don't exactly understand rat poison. Here's a quick synopsis. You got people picking Alabama to go 9-3. And you've got some people online saying, oh, shut up with this rat poison. Look, rat poison, it's not when you're getting bad comments. It's when you're getting good comments. When do you work the hardest? When you're told you can't do something. Oh, your football team's going to go 9-3. Oh, well, thanks for giving us some fuel for our summer workouts. No, you get the rat poison when, oh, your football team's going to go 12-0, undefeated. Y'all can't lose. That's the rat poison. You sit back on your butt and you don't work nearly as hard as you are capable of, and then you get some terrible results. So we'll talk about rat poison tomorrow. We'll talk maybe about Kalen Clark and Angel Reese. Golly, that is exhausting to me online. And if you're a fight fan, this Conor McGregor fight, Michael Chandler fight, looks like it's in serious jeopardy as Conor McGregor continues to play online games. We might talk about that again tomorrow. But for today, we talked about Tyler Buchner. We talked Alabama football just a little bit as Kalen Russell became the first Alabama commit to join the to join Kalen DeBoer's recruiting class of 2025. You can read about that. My man Blake Byler already has that on BamaCentral.com. We talked about Greg Byrne, baseball, and softball as well. So we'll get out of here for the day. Remind you, you can always find the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon. We appreciate everybody who watches the show on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, right there on the Bama Central YouTube channel, or on my own social medias at Joe Gaither6. Shoot me a like, a comment, question, query, or complaint. We can be friends or we can be enemies, whatever you like. We appreciate everybody's interaction on the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.